Welcome to ProjectME, the podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, the founder of ProjectME, multimillionaire entrepreneur, former TV newscaster, money-making expert, female empowerment speaker, and self-proclaimed office supply addict. My mission is to take the mystery out of making big money. Every week on ProjectME, the podcast, I'll share success tips, strategies, and stories from other entrepreneurs, experts, and millionaires, showing you exactly how you can achieve your most exceptional life. Now let's get to it. You all know I love sharing my secrets of how I went from $17,000 a year to a multimillionaire. My top essential tool for managing my two successful businesses, plus my crazy life, is my paper planner. But not any random planner, specifically my Inner Guide yearly planner. The Inner Guide planner doesn't just organize my schedule, it helps me map out and discover my goals, dreams, self-care, and keeps my millionaire mindset on track. I want you all to get planning right away for 2019. So I arranged to get a special Inner Guide discount exclusive to my ProjectME posse. Go pick out your favorite yearly planner at inner-guide.com. And at checkout, use the code ProjectME 15% off, and you will receive 15% off your entire order. If you are driving or multitasking and can't write this down, the Inner Guide link and code is in my Instagram bio at ProjectME with Tiffany. And remember, as I always say, you are either planning for success or heading to failure. Hey, my ProjectME posse. Thanks for listening to the podcast ProjectME with Tiffany Carter. And this episode is the 4 key things I wish someone had warned me about in making massive money. Wow. If I had somebody sit me down and spell it out as bluntly as I'm going to for you today, you know what? I still would have probably made mistakes and run into problems, but I wouldn't have been as surprised or caught off guard or felt so alone, confused, bewildered, stunned that these things happened. And there's probably some checks and balances that I would have put in place, having heard this advice from someone I respected. So that's my goal for you guys today, is even if you aren't where you for sure want to be financially, or that seems even far away for you, this is incredibly important to hear, because your life can change in 6 months. You know, just because you're not making what you want to make right now, in 6 months, you very well could be. I mean, it can happen that quickly for you. It's just how things can work, or it could happen this year, whatever it may be. And I want you guys to be prepared. Unlike my circumstances, right? That's, part of the whole thing behind ProjectME, is that I can use all of my experiences, my mistakes, my big wins, all these things that I've learned over 11 years of being an entrepreneur, and help get you guys there faster and in a more gentle, less painful way than perhaps I did it. So let's get to it. The first thing I wish someone had told me about making massive money is that not everyone will be happy for you or even supportive. It's just, I'm the type of person that if someone's doing really well, even if there is like a hint of like envy or even maybe jealousy, I mean, we all have that in us, right? So even if I have some of that, my overall like happiness for the person, unless the person's, a dick, but my overall happiness for the person supersedes everything else. I'm genuinely very happy for people. I've had many friends who had a lot of success early on, that were, in terms of how I define success when we're looking at it like monetarily, or even where they're at in their career or business. They had that very early on, in their 20s. Why I was being broke as a joke as a TV newscaster. On the outside, it's like, whoa, Tiffany made it, but I was broke as a joke. I was making $17,000 a year. I had friends already making $100,000, getting a company car, laptop, having this amazing expense account, where I was like eating ramen, right? So I was happy for them. There was some envy, but overall, I was happy. My whole point in saying that is not everyone's like that. Not everyone's going to be like that. Even people that are in your family, even friends that you've had since childhood. What happens is when you have massive success, whether it was a windfall, someone died and you got it, you won it, you had a fluke experience you didn't have to work that hard for, or whether you worked your butt to the bone, which is most people's situation, and you built it. It doesn't matter. It strikes a nerve with people. What happens when you have that massive success is that it casts a giant spotlight on people who aren't going after their dreams and aren't going after what they want for whatever reason. And it makes people really uncomfortable. That's not your problem. You're not responsible for someone else's feelings about themselves. You're responsible for yourself, how you present yourself in your life. And I would hide my success a lot of times, especially when I was getting, in the millionaire zone, right? I mean, we all know the stats. It's less than 1% of the world is reached that level of financial success, so to speak. And so I would kind of keep quiet about it because I didn't want to be disrespectful to friends who were maybe financially struggling, or I didn't want to seem like a bragger or a boaster. But I realized that was me dimming my own light. And the people who I looked up to and the people who I look up to today, they don't dim their financial success or their success with their business or their personal success. They don't necessarily, go around and like bragging about it, but they certainly don't dim it. And those people are motivating and inspiring to me. So it was actually doing a disservice to myself, to my friends, to others by kind of keeping that part small. I actually thought if I, showcased my financial success, my personal success, my business success, that I would lose friends, that people wouldn't want to be my friend anymore because they would feel uncomfortable. I also had a fear that people were out of the woodwork would ask me for money, which, by the way, that does happen. It's like, just because you have it, people ask for it. It's just crazy. Like they just think like, oh, I have like a pile of cash I hang around with and I just like dole it out just because I feel like it. Anyway, I digress. So not everyone's going to be happy for you. Even people who you'll be shocked by some of the people who've seemed very supportive all through your life. They might have even been in your wedding, or you will be surprised at least by one person, but I'm sure it's going to be more. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to tell you how it is and what I've seen happen to dozens and dozens of people, what's happened to myself. And I'm just giving you a heads up. It just makes people uncomfortable. It really has nothing to do with you. It's not personal. They know deep inside, they're not doing what it takes to go after what they want in life. And your success is just shining a giant spotlight on that area of themselves that they are ashamed of, that they're mad at, that they feel sad about. And you remind them of that. So what I also noticed happen is quite a few people kind of just stopped communicating with me, not like a hard ghosting, but I just noticed like a drifting away, and it hurt. It felt like rejection to me, but then really looking back now, it was a blessing because they weren't going to be along for the ride. They would have dragged me down anyway. And they didn't like that spotlight being cast on them. And I didn't brag or do anything like that. But here's how I put it best. Okay. And you guys know I'm pretty open that I am diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. So that can come with some depression, but it's mostly a lot of like anxious energy. And I would be, let's say I was like in just a bad way, which can happen sometimes. Okay. Like it's just part of the gig. I can just have a bad moment, a bad day, could be triggered by something. And I walk into like a coffee shop and there's like, I call her like Chipper Pepper. There's Chipper Pepper. Oh, how are you? Oh my God, what a great day. The birds are chirping and the sun is shining and life is amazing. And I hated that. I would hate that person for that moment. In my head, I'd be like, they're fake, they're annoying, they're gross, and I couldn't get away from them fast enough. Even if it's someone who is probably genuinely a good person, who knows? But if I had a friend like that in my life and I was going through a hard time, that type of person didn't feel good to me because their energy, their positivity, their happiness, their lightness cast a shadow on how I felt, which wasn't good. So I hope that analogy makes sense. I think most of us can relate. You know, if you have an off day, you're fighting with your significant other, your kids are annoying you, you had some like setback in business, and then you run across like, Miss, I have the perfect everything, whether that's true or not. It might feel like that. It's like, ew, I can't get away. I can't get away fast enough from this person. It's the same thing that happens when you have massive money and make massive success. No matter how real you are, no matter how open you are about sharing your other issues or whatever, it makes people uncomfortable with those own areas within themselves. It has nothing to do with you. And let them go. If they want to go, let them go. Holding on will cause you more pain. Number 2, the second thing I wish was told to me is that desperate people do desperate things. That is a line I remind myself of actually quite often. I've shared it probably in a couple other episodes, usually episodes where I'm talking about mistakes I've made. Failures that happen, mishaps. I usually bring up that quote. It's a short one, and I want you guys to have it drilled in your head somewhere. Okay, and here's a great analogy. Okay, so I travel a lot, right? I've always traveled a lot for work, even in corporate America. And, most hotel rooms have a safe in them. And I remember I would say, and this was like ex-boyfriend number 512 probably. But I remember I would say, he said something to me like, oh, like make sure you lock your stuff up in the safe. And I traveled so much, and I didn't bring anything elaborate when I traveled, especially, in my corporate job, I was traveling all the time. Like I had the basics, whatever. And I was like, well, I don't really have anything. Like I have like a few pair of like earrings and maybe an iPad, but it's like generation 2 iPad. It's like pretty old, and some headphones. Like I'm sure it's fine. Like I can just zip up my suitcase. And he's actually the one, I remember him saying, he said, don't make it easy for someone to be dishonest. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, you're making it easy to tempt someone's dishonesty, and everyone has that in them. And you're tempting fate. Don't make it so easy for someone. And I had to think about that. And he's like, imagine having a whole bunch of fresh baked cookies sitting out, right? But you didn't want anyone to eat any of them, so you left them all sitting out. The likelihood that someone is going to eat one or break off a piece of one is extremely high. So you're doing the same thing by leaving your stuff out. You're tempting fate. You're tempting the dishonesty that lives inside each one of us. Truly, each one of us has told white lies, have done some things we're not proud of. And I was like, wow. And when that was put that way, it made a lot of sense. And then I remember saying like, yeah, but this stuff really isn't worth that much. Like one of my lines I used to use is, if they really want it that badly, they must really need it. They can have it. But he goes, but you don't really mean that. You would be annoyed if it was taken. I go, yeah, you're right. And he said, this might not be of high value to you monetarily, but to someone else in a different circumstance, someone who's cleaning your room, that could be worth, kids' meals for a month. They could resell it for that. You have no idea. It really made me shift how I handled things, not just with a safe in a room, but it really shifted how I handled things even in life, right? But then, of course, I still, when I moved on from corporate America and I transitioned to being an entrepreneur, that was a whole nother bag. when it came to this whole desperate people do desperate things, because I got the whole thing of, don't leave stuff out in a hotel room, like you have someone clean your house, don't just leave money and like diamonds sitting out or something like that. Like I got that program really well. What I didn't get is people you're even paying, whether they're a contract worker or they're an actual employee, this also applies. Desperate people do desperate things. And I want to add to that, people who have maybe been trustworthy, never stolen from you, lied to you, whatever, even for years, they can turn untrustworthy. It only takes one action to turn untrustworthy. Just one. That's all it takes. And we don't know always what's going on in somebody's life. Someone could develop an addiction to something that you don't know about. So now they're in that whole addiction mindset. They could be really struggling financially. You could be paying them, but their expenses are far exceeding it, and they're really desperate. We have no freaking idea what's going on. So just because someone even seems trustworthy or because you're paying them, that doesn't mean that you should tempt fate. So I've had numerous employees steal from me. I've had them lie to me. I've had them actually sell proprietary information and break non-disclosure agreements, etc. When you make massive money, you become a higher target for these types of people, and you tempt that energy, that dishonest energy with people who may genuinely 90% of the time, 95% of the time might be trustworthy. You tempt that. It's not because someone doesn't necessarily respect you. They don't respect themselves, but they see someone with massive success. There's a story a lot of people can tell themselves, which is, Tiffany won't be missing that. I can take a bunch of her Sharpies and her Post-it notes and more office supplies because she has office supplies for days. She won't notice that. Like she won't, and even if she did, I don't think she would care. That's maybe worth like $15 to her. So she's a millionaire, so who cares, right? I mean, that's crazy, but that's what people do. Now, if someone asked me, could I take some of these Post-it notes and have some Sharpies? Likelihood my answer is going to be yes. It would have been a lot simpler, but people steal in those ways, right? Versus kind of stealing from someone who is like just starting out as an entrepreneur, and they're everything's really tight and you don't have that much money. It tempts people more because they think there's so much there you won't notice or you won't care. They tell themselves these stories. I've had people steal thousands of dollars from me. I have loaned money to people that I've never seen back. Therefore, I don't loan money anymore, period. So don't be calling or DMing. But you just become a bigger target. It's just how it is. And it can be something as simple as, it could even be a friend, someone taking advantage of the fact that they know you've had this great success. Maybe you have, maybe you have like a wine cellar or a wine rack with tons of bottles of wine. And it's like, well, they won't notice if I just take one. I mean, instead of asking, it becomes this weird, they won't notice. And maybe this person has never stole from you in any other way, but all it takes is one action, one time to break trust, and it's done. It really is. And it's unfortunate. So I've been, I've had this happen in big ways and little ways, but I remember saying to my business coach, I was really upset when there's one individual who stole, I would say we're for sure over the $10,000 mark, which becomes like a legit crime. And I was so shocked and hurt because this is someone who I trusted. This is someone who had passwords to all my shit. Okay. Like all of it. I was shocked. And I remember what my coach said to me. And he said, this is part of the cost of doing business. And I said, well, this is horrible. He goes, what do you think all these big major retailers go through? Nordstrom's or JCPenney or, whatever. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, there has to be such a markup on, clothing and items that they sell. It's not just so they're profitable. They have a giant loss percentage ratio that has to be configured into their business because of theft and people doing shady things with returns and that kind of thing. And he said, this is part of doing business. This is one of the costs of doing business. When you get big enough, there needs to be a line item where you literally have a line item in there where there's going to be loss costs. That's hard to say, but there's going to be a line item in there where there's a percentage that that there's a high likelihood that's your loss carryover. And this is standard in business. And I became very aware of that when I was hired to run a very large, I shouldn't say very large. In the investment world, it's not considered large, but let's just say $100 million company, okay? And I was brought on as the CEO. And I also saw this here because now I had access behind the scenes in the books, in the finances. I had access to everything in the financials to see what was going on. And this is a company that was around for many decades. So very established, lots of long-term employees, blah, blah, blah. And I was blown away. I remember saying to the CFO, very sharp man, I remember saying to him, oh my God, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not at least $1 million a year in theft from employees, from them taking supplies, from them misusing corporate credit cards. There was even a higher level executive who bought himself a car because he had such a big amount of room on his corporate card. He bought a car. I mean, crazy stuff. And I heard this reiterated again, that this is the cost of doing business. People steal toilet paper, pencils, pens, supplies. Some businesses are more prone to it than others, but there's no possible way you can be a watchdog watching everyone all the time. And I said, but don't you fire these people? He goes, well, the ones who get caught, yeah, but not everyone gets caught. And I go, well, what about these people who do get caught and they've taken, a lot? I go, this is crazy. And I go, don't we sue them? And he said, the cost of suing them, it would end up equaling the price of even that car that person bought. And I go, wow. So it's used as a loss carryover. And it's actually something that can be done without going into the weeds with it, but it's something that can be used, for business taxes and that kind of thing. So it really opened my eyes to realizing it really isn't personal. It's the cost of doing business. And this can happen. And when I say desperate people do desperate things, I want to make it clear. I don't just mean people physically stealing from you, siphoning money, misusing corporate funds. I also mean lying too, because people can steal your time, and your time is incredibly valuable. So people can steal your time, your ideas, a lot of other things other than physical stuff. So I just want to make that clear for you that this is going to happen. I'm huge into manifesting, so I'm not trying to be negative. Again, I'm a very practical manifestation person. So this is something that will happen when you start really getting successful, if you aren't already. And if you say, oh, that won't happen to me, or it's not happened to me, it's happening. You just don't know it yet. It is happening. It just might be at like a micro level. Okay. It's just, again, it's the cost of doing business. All right. Third thing I wish I was told is the more money you make, the more you need to protect your assets. So the more money you make, you become a target for thieves. You become a target for internet scams. You become a target for, malware. You become a target for people on the street looking to sue somebody, you just become a target. When you have nice things, you drive nice cars, you live in a nice house, you just become a target. There is unfortunately a lot of dishonest people in the world, and dishonest people who are wanting to steal and get money that way or things that way, aren't going to target a broke person or even someone who's like, average income. They're going to target someone who has money. And in general, when you're making good, great, exceptional money, you're going to have a lot of nice things in your life. Even if nice things, so to speak, isn't your main focus, you just are. You're going to drive a luxury car. You're going to have a luxury house. You're going to have just nicer stuff in general, and you become a target for those people. So you need to make sure you put things in place to protect yourself. This is one of the things like I really wish someone sat down and told me, because I would have hired a lawyer much earlier on in my business to make sure I had things in place, protections in place. I would have also had more security measures in place when it comes to like internet security and that kind of thing. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's really big on Instagram, and she makes sure she herself even does that double entry, that double password entry. It's not, you can do that double authentication option, which is, it can be annoying and it's a little more work, but she does this because that's an important asset to her business is Instagram. So she makes sure she does even precautions like that. And those precautions don't cost you any extra money. Another precaution I would say is, even though it's a little more annoying, make your passwords very complicated. And not, if there's a personal element in your password, in order for you to remember it, make sure you have other elements in that password that aren't personal, like your damn birthday or anyone in your close family's birthday. You just need to make it more complex. I know it's a pain, makes it harder to remember, blah, 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 but you will thank yourself later. I actually had my first business, TLC Enterprises, my parent company. It's not an online based company. I mean, you can look for it if you want, but, and there's a website for it. It's nothing to write home about. There's a website for credibility. People like seeing there's a website. I've never gotten one lead from it because I don't try to get a lead from it. My point in saying all this is it's not a super active website, meaning there's not a ton of traffic to it. There's not a ton of updates to it. And my website, this was a couple years ago, ended up being taken over. You can actually have your website held hostage. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's what it's called. You can Google it. I had it held hostage, and then they want you to pay a ransom. They want you to pay a fee in order to release it back to you. And it's because I probably didn't keep the security or have someone pay someone to keep all the security up on the site and whatever. But the issue is I didn't really care about like the WordPress site. I cared about my URL. Like someone's going to my URL for that business, going to my website, and they see some crazy jargon, all over the screen. That's weird. It's like, okay, is like she not in business, or what's up with her, whatever. So that's what I cared about. And I also felt like I felt invaded. Did we get it resolved? We did, but it took days and it took hours, and no, I didn't pay anyone. However, if it was a more sophisticated operation, that could happen. And so I just want to let you guys know, especially since a lot of you have online businesses and brands, you can become a target for things like this. And it's worth investing in internet security, software, and measures, and getting an attorney ahead of time so you can help prevent it. It's like, I hope you don't leave your, car unlocked when you go into the gym or something, right? That's tempting fate to do that. That's just stupid. Or leaving your purse on the front seat while you go and do a yoga class or something, even if your car is locked. Now you're tempting fate, right? So basically, the same holds true with your online assets. You're tempting fate by making it easier for a thief to get in. So that's a really good way to look at it. Is that ask yourself, how much am I tempting fate? How much am I tempting a dishonest person by not having more barriers to entry in place? And yes, I know that security software costs money and it's more admin work, and none of us want any of that. But let me tell you, I wish someone told me that very clearly, who I respected and I trusted, because it would have been worth every penny and then some, because I had to pay an expert to help unravel all this and get my URL back. And let me tell you, that costs a lot more than buying some software. Okay. And now the last thing really isn't the last. I'm giving you my top 4. So I guess number 4, the fourth thing I wish someone told me about making massive money. This one is probably the most personal to me. It's that your mindset issues come up in a very crazy way, even when you have money. So a lot of people will say to me, because you guys know I teach, millionaire mindset, abundance mindset, the whole low self-worth equals low net worth thing. Just because you have a shit ton of money in the bank, that does not erase any money mindset issues or abundance mindset issues. I thought it would. Therefore, I kept driving myself, right? Okay, when I have $1 million in the bank, I'll have peace of mind. Well, that wasn't enough. When I have 5 million in the bank, I'll have peace of mind. Well, that's not enough. I can tell you it's not going to be enough if you've not done the other work on yourself and done that work on those beliefs. There is it'd have to be like 100 million in the bank, maybe, for that to supersede these crazy money mindset issues. And in fact, I bet you they'd still come up. And it sounds insane. Well, yeah, these false beliefs are false beliefs. It's that whole fear thing, false evidence appearing real. No one ever said it was rational. The shit that we think about, these limiting beliefs, are not rational. It's all fear-based, so it's not enough. And I kept chasing that. I'll feel secure. I'll feel good about myself. I'll feel safe. I'll feel like I can kind of calm down and chill out and feel more inner peace the more money I have in the bank. No, doesn't work like that. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't help make you feel more secure. Okay, of course it does. You do have an element of empowerment, security, safety, freedom. Of course. What I'm saying is it doesn't erase all the stuff. Money's not enough alone to erase those things. What happens is new crazy mindset things come up, new fears come up that are so whack, but they come up. It does not matter. And what has helped me and why I'm telling you is having faith and leaning into faith and having a belief in something greater than myself. Higher power, universe, God, spirit, angels, I don't care what it is, but that something is bigger than myself, and leaning into that faith and surrendering into that faith and know that Tiffany Carter isn't in charge. There's something greater at work here. The universe is at work. It's not me. That really, really helped me because now I know I can rely that I'm going to be taken care of and I'm going to be supported by the universe, by God. I'm here for a reason. I have a good message. I'm a good person. I'm going to be supported in every which way. And that helped dampen and soften that crazy money noise. I'll share a couple of them with you really quick. It was and I still get it once in a while. I could lose everything. I would end up in a tent. I have so many expenses every month. I have $17,000 of expenses every month rolling out, business, personal, you name it. Okay. And it's I have all these expenses and if one thing goes wrong, I still have to pay all these people and I'll end up having to be bankrupt and living in a tent. And then because of my own, anxiety and stuff, I could keep rolling with that. So in order to pull myself back into reality, right, I ask myself, is this absolutely true? Is this a fact? Okay, no. And then I go into faith. Okay, let's go. I talk to myself like, let's go into faith here. Let's go into the reality that the universe is here to support us for our greatest good. We're the ones who get in our own way. And I remind myself I might need to read, literature or a daily reader that helps remind me. I love reading Gabby Bernstein's books. They're great. Even reading like her blog or something like that. Helps ground me and brings me back into reality, coming away from that fear. So I just want you guys to know, wherever you're at financially in your life, whatever it is, there isn't going to be some external thing that is going to all of a sudden be the cure-all for you feeling safe, secure, loved, worthy, all these things. There's no man, there's no woman, there's no amount of kids, there's no house, there's no city, there's no money that is going to completely do that for you, okay? It might give you like a boost and a bump, right? It gives you something, obviously, but it's not going to take away those crazy fear thoughts that can come up around money. It's just not. That's why it's so important to do that work. And, if I was told this before, just like, someone, if I had hired my coach when I should have versus 5 years in, thank you, being a stubborn Virgo, I would have, it might not have stopped it, but it would have made me pause and think. I would have at least known that I needed to do more of this mindset work along the way and not think the solution was by putting more money in the bank, was by making more money, was if I just do this, if I just made this, if I just moved here, if I just met the one. I would have known that it all starts and ends with me, and I would have done more work along the way, which would have been really helpful. So hopefully these things were helpful to you. I imagine they are, because I know if they were told to me, I would have really appreciated it. So you guys let me know by taking a screenshot and tagging me at ProjectME with Tiffany. That really helps when I see those, especially when you put a little comment in there, maybe something you liked about it. Really helpful. Or if you want to be super awesome, you can always leave me a review on iTunes, which makes iTunes really happy, which makes more people find the show, which is great. I know it's a little more effort, but that's really appreciated too. So thank you guys for listening. Wishing you great wealth, health, and worth as always. Love you guys. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.